In the news tonight, Ban Ki-moon briefs the UN Security Council on Aleppo, saying the battle in the city must be followed by an immediate end to violence, as the Syrian army says victory will be announced any minute. Iraq's elite counter-terrorism service discovered a center used by Daesh as a communication and command headquarters in the eastern part of Mosul as they continue to advance to the city. And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump names head of ExxonMobil Rex Tillerson as his choice for U.S. Secretary of State and wins backing from some Republicans despite his ties to Russia. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon briefed the UN Security Council on Syria's Aleppo amid accusations by Western countries of atrocities against civilians as the Syrian army advances. The briefing, at the request of Britain and France, comes as the Syrian military says the last rebel pocket in Aleppo could fall at any moment. Unverified reports suggested that Syrian soldiers and allied Iraqi fighters had shot dead 82 civilians in recaptured districts of Aleppo. The Syrian army has denied carrying out killings or torture, and Russia said it was the rebels who have kept over 100,000 people as human shields.
It is past time for you to act and to force others to act upon this prescription. Aleppo should represent the end of the quest for military victory, not the start of a broader military campaign in a country already ravaged beyond all recognition by 5 years of war. The current battle needs to be followed by an immediate end to violence by all sides, unfettered humanitarian access throughout engagement, and genuine engagement without preconditions around the political tools we already possess, including Security Council Resolution 2254.
Russia's envoy to the UN told the Council that a deal for rebel fighters to leave their last pocket of territory in Aleppo did not apply to civilians. He said that there was no need for the remaining civilians to leave and that the city, under the control of the Syrian government, would have humanitarian arrangements in place. He noted that the Russian military who are in the city have not observed any abuses of international humanitarian law. Earlier, the UN Secretary General said he was alarmed by reports of atrocities against a large number of civilians in Syria, including women and children. In an address at the Central Emergency Response Fund meeting at the United Nations, Ban said the carnage must stop and called on parties to the Syria conflict to return to the negotiating table. He said armed conflicts, instability and persecution have forced 65 million men and women and children to flee their countries, but said he is particularly alarmed at the carnage in Syria.
I mention Syria specifically because the country is enduring a further escalation in violence amid what was already one of the most brutal conflicts in a generation. We are getting alarming reports of atrocities against civilians, including women and children in eastern Aleppo. We must do all we can to stop the carnage. All fighters, particularly government forces and their families, their allies, must honor their obligation to respect civilians and abide by the laws of war and human rights.
On the ground in Syria, meanwhile, a Syrian military source confirmed that an Aleppo ceasefire deal has been reached and that evacuations of rebel fighters would begin early morning tomorrow. He said the rebels would leave towards the western Aleppo countryside during the day. Thousands of people fled the front lines of fighting in Aleppo as the Syrian military advanced on the city's final pocket of rebel resistance. The defeat of rebels from more than half of their shrinking territory in Aleppo sparked a mass flight of civilians and insurgents in bitter weather, a crisis the United Nations said was a complete meltdown of humanity. Behind those fleeing was a wasteland of flattened buildings, concrete rubble and bullet-poked walls where tens of thousands had lived until recent days under intense bombardment, even after medical and rescue services had collapsed. Just before the ceasefire was agreed, Director of Media Section of the Syrian Army warned rebels in eastern Aleppo to give up and leave the city or face death. General Samir Sleiman, speaking from Sha'ad district, recaptured by the Syrian army last week, said the rebels' choices have become limited. He said he expected the army leadership to announce victory any time today or tomorrow.
We in the Syrian army follow the political administration's orders, but we can say that terrorists have refused to leave before and they are still refusing to leave. So Syrian army said that their choices became limited and those are to surrender or die.
Far from the war in Syria, Syrian refugees are bringing a taste of Syria to a German Christmas market. A Syrian refugee family took part in a traditional German market to try and show people what it is like being Syrian at the moment. The father and his 21-year-old daughter held an exhibition of their own paintings and drawings depicting scenes of suffering in Syria. They plan to use the proceeds from the 15 paintings they sold to help provide treatment for Syrian children injured in the war. The younger girls, 9 and 10, were part of a choir, singing Christmas songs, German Christmas songs, while wearing red Santa hats with their schoolmates on stage, while the mother cooked falafel and kibbeh for the visitors. The participation of the family in a distinctly German tradition was welcomed by visitors as a sign of integration.
This picture stands for the situation in Syria. The situation is waiting for something. This husband of this woman has been arrested. The woman is waiting for the return of her husband. The mother is waiting for the return of her son, just as the daughter is waiting for the return of her father. Everyone in Syria is waiting for something. That is why I did this painting called Waiting.
It moves me a lot, particularly the pictures that Noir's father Munir paints. They move me to tears. Yes, it is also a political statement that he makes you think of. And Noir is also a fantastic artist, very, very wonderful. And I am happy that this integration is happening, simply and without a big fanfare and so wonderfully. Over to Iraq, where the elite counterterrorism service said they have discovered a center used by Daesh as a communication and command headquarters in the eastern part of Mosul. Troops of CTS, also known as the Golden Division, discovered the center on Sunday during a search campaign of the newly recaptured neighborhood of An-Nur district of eastern Mosul. The center, according to CTS Commander General Ma'an al-Sa'di, was used as a workshop to fix communication devices and also a warehouse. CTS troops are part of a 100,000-strong Iraqi alliance, which launched the campaign to retake Mosul on October 17th. It includes soldiers, security forces, Kurdish Peshmerga fighters, and mainly Shiite Popular Mobilization Forces, and is backed by a US-led international coalition. Iraqi elite troops, meanwhile, continue to push deeper into eastern Mosul. 2 Yazidi women who were abducted by Daesh terrorists in 2014 and used as sex slaves have accepted the European Parliament's Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought and Expression. Nadia Murad and Lamia Ajibashar were announced as the recipients in October and were given the prize today during a ceremony in Strasbourg, France. The two women are among as many as 7,000 women and girls kidnapped from their village of Kocho near Sinjar in northwestern Iraq and sold as sex slaves. Both women now live in Germany and have been working to raise awareness about the treatment of Yazidis, which the United Nations has called a genocide. The Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, named after the late Russian dissident and scientist Andrei Sakharov, is awarded each year by the European Parliament. It honors individuals and organizations defending human rights and basic freedoms. And back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania has urged a collective effort by education professionals to strengthen the kingdom's learning landscape, saying educational development requires that methods of the past be substituted with new ones compatible with the needs of the future. Her Majesty was speaking at a ceremony at the Cultural Palace in the presence of the Minister of Education to honor the winners of the Queen Rania Award for Excellence in Education. She said progress in education involves training teachers before and after employment and called on teachers to lead what she described as an educational renaissance from within the classrooms and to invite their communities to be part of this renaissance. Winning teachers and counselors received monetary awards of 3,000 JDs for first place, 2,000 for second place, and 1,000 for third. Those with us today have been able to devise solutions out of sheer need and despite great challenges, Her Majesty told the ceremony. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has chosen former Texas Governor Rick Perry to head the U.S. Department of Energy. He also settled on U.S. Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers as Interior Secretary. Though the appointments of all cabinet members requires Senate confirmation, it was Trump's choice for Secretary of State that raised concerns from lawmakers. Though Rex Tillerson's experience in diplomacy stems from making deals with foreign countries as CEO of ExxonMobil, it's his ties with Russia and its president that is causing the concern. Here's a story.
President-elect Donald Trump chose a fellow deal-making CEO as his top diplomat. He named ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson as his Secretary of State. Starting as a production engineer at the world's largest energy company, Tillerson ran business units overseas, including in Russia, before becoming CEO in 2006. But it's his ties with Russia and President Vladimir Putin that could make a Senate confirmation hearing a contentious one. He has opposed U.S. sanctions against Russia for its incursion into Crimea. And his nomination comes just after the CIA concluded Russia had intervened in the U.S. election with cyber attacks to help Trump win the White House. Moscow's top diplomat said Russia is ready to work with Tillerson. In choosing Tillerson, Trump passed over a string of politicians and leaders, including ex-New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Senator Bob Corker, ex-UN Ambassador John Bolton, and former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney. Exxon may not be impacted much if Tillerson were to leave. Raymond James analyst Pavel Molchanov said, Exxon is not a company where it particularly matters who the CEO is. Like a supertanker, it's very slow to turn, and it doesn't matter who the captain is. ExxonMobil shares rose at the start of trading.
An enormous sinkhole opened up on a seaside cliff south of San Francisco, threatening homes as large seasonal waves compounded the erosion. The sinkhole, about 13.7 meters across, left a gaping hole in a trail that leads down to the beach in Pacifica. Town officials said the sinkhole appeared because of large waves called king tides. Forecasters say the king tides are expected to reach their highest levels today or tomorrow. A rare book created and handwritten by Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling sold for just under $470,000 at an auction in London at the lower end of its estimated price range. Sotheby's auction house said the manuscript sold for $467,000 to an anonymous buyer. The Tales of Beedle and Bart is one of 6 copies Rowling made as presents to those who helped bring her magical world of wizards and witches to life. The copy was presented to editor Barry Cunningham, who published Rowling's spellbinding debut Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and has a personal dedication from the author. The volume of 5 wizarding fairy tales had a price estimate of $380,000 to $634,000. Portugal and Real Madrid forward Cristiano Ronaldo won the Ballon d'Or award for the 4th time after claiming the European Championship and Champions League titles in 2016. He is now one short of his special friend. Earlier this year, this little 6-year-old from a province in eastern Afghanistan asked his father for a Messi shirt, but it was outside the means of his family, who instead dressed him in a blue and white plastic bag, and images of him in the makeshift jersey went viral. Not long after that, Mortaza received signed Argentina and Barcelona shirts in a package, along with a ball from Messi. And finally, low temperatures accompanied by high southwesterly winds and rainfall prevail for the rest of tonight, mainly in the northern and central regions. Tomorrow, the low depression continues to affect the kingdom, bringing high winds and heavy rain across most regions, while snowfall is in the forecast over hilly areas 1,000 meters above sea level. The Gulf of Aqaba continues to expect fair conditions, but with a chance for light rain showers, while winds will be southwesterly brisk and the seas choppy. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Ban Ki-moon briefs the UN Security Council on Aleppo, saying the battle in the city must be followed by an immediate end to violence, as the Syrian army says victory will be announced any minute. Iraq's elite counter-terrorism service discovered a center used by Daesh as a communication and command headquarters in the eastern part of Mosul as it continued to advance to the city. And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump names head of ExxonMobil Rex Tillerson as his choice for U.S. Secretary of State, and backing from some Republicans despite his ties to Russia. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of news. I'm Alia Tukhan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and stay warm.